Jim was tips. There are people rarely in life, in organizations, who so personify the positive values that we like to bring to an organization. And it's very rare that you get somebody who really personifies that. Jim loved this section, and he recognized, as I think all great leaders do, that the strength of the organization was not only in its ethos, but in the people who were brought into the section.
TIPS always talks about how it's 3 legs of a stool, and it has the plaintiff's bar, which would be somebody like me, and the defense bar, which would have been somebody like Jim, and corporate counsel, and all different people coming together with collegiality and collaboration. But Jim meant it. He went and found people in committees and members of TIPS that were young. They were of every background you can think of, every sexual orientation, every race.
Jim was in there finding new projects and finding new ways to involve new people with leadership. Worked closely with the Leadership Academy folks as that program started. And everybody who came into TIPS got to know Jim and got to love Jim as much as those of us who knew him for 40 years.
Jim Carroll was one of the reasons why so many of us came to TIPS meetings year after year.
Jim personified an all-in aspect. If he was asked to do a job or he committed to do a job, he was all in.
Jim Carroll was a great lawyer, he was a smart man, and he was a friend to everyone.
Jim was a person of fierce integrity, charismatic leadership, and energy, and he was a damn fine lawyer. We were all together in Chicago at the annual meeting. Shortly thereafter, Jim returned home and tragically died of a heart attack within days. We felt that Jim's contribution to the ABA and to the TIPS section was so significant that we needed to perpetuate his example and his memory.
I think John Tarpley was chair of the section at the time, and John asked me to chair a committee to make some suggestions after reflection and some investigation and talking to people to try and devise what would be the best and most appropriate kind of remembrance for Jim.
We talked about a whole array of things to do, and then finally someone came up with the brilliant idea of naming an award after him, because he loved the fact that Andrew Hecker got an award. Jim saw Andrew Hecker as his icon, an ideal, and he was so excited about the Hecker Award and what that meant that it seemed the best way to honor Jim was to create an award after him and to allow his legacy to live on in the spirit of leadership with the Jim Carroll Award.
I think Jim would, if he were sitting here, would be the first to tell you that his life was so tremendously enriched by what he was able to do and the people he was able to get to meet and the projects he was involved with through TIPS.
The energy and character of Jim, I think, is the most inspirational thing that we can perpetuate.
Jim Carroll's inspiration to us was to take your work very seriously, but never to take yourself too seriously. That's why we loved him and we miss him.
He was an amazing person, and he did it with grace. He did it with charisma. I don't remember him losing his temper, and I think he did it because he really loved people. And if we could try to be more like Jim, it's a pretty big pair of shoes to fill, but it's something that shouldn't be forgotten. Oh, and his sense of humor. He could accomplish a lot because he didn't take himself too seriously, and I think he'd want to be remembered for all those things. He was a great guy and a wonderful family man.